Garrick Solutions is a business that focuses on implementing automation. And the core focus is how do we make companies become more efficient? So increase profitability and increase efficiency. And one of our favorite phrases is, you don't know what you don't know. So the idea is how do you leverage technology to small and medium-sized businesses that they don't believe they have access to technology to compete against larger enterprises. So we do that in a couple of different ways. One of them is through automation. So formerly it was known as robotic process automation, but I think the term surprises or scares people, when they hear it. So now it's just known as automation. And the idea is just to look at any process that a business does and look at the pain points and identify ways of how do you eliminate mistakes and how do you increase the speed of whether it's doing a report, putting together a structure, organizing files, or just even coding invoices. So how can you, I guess, break the wheel and build it again to just become more efficient ultimately?
It is a little clear because I know we talked a little bit about the automation. She had mentioned some other things, so it wasn't exactly clear. So good to know we're talking about that. And you mentioned on Friday when we spoke, though, it's pretty much all custom built. So I mean, you're actually developing the software to do this, or are you integrating into other platforms that they already use? How does the solution work?
Awesome. So it's a little bit of both, actually. Okay. Every company has their own technology system. And what we do is we take a look at, so it's commonly referred to as like their technology stack.
Yeah.
And then we'll look at like, what are they using in different areas? So operations, marketing, finance, like let's say customer service, and then to see, how is the data flowing? And then what we'll do is we'll create custom applications or automations within their own stack so that they can then use them for their advantage.
So they could be using a HubSpot or something like that for marketing, but then be using a Zendesk or something for customer service, and you'll help create the integrations. I guess you're maybe making custom APIs and things like that for those programs to be able to talk.
Right, exactly. So it's just bridging the gap. And a lot of the times it really helps us coming in from a third party versus the vendor and the customer or the client. Just because you can take a look at the documentation and provide the customer the best solution possible. Because a lot of the times, the vendors would try to, hey, let me set you up on a higher base pricing, or let me offer you the solution that's, it might not be what the customer needs. And if we have the tools, and usually what's very positive is that now, just because technology is evolving in such a rapid pace, companies are more willing to open up and just share the documentation to create these custom APIs. So it's just doing the research and going through to see what can be done so that you can integrate the systems, which ultimately just helps the customer and improves the brand of the company to the customer, right? Just because now you're adding more value.
Right. So the value proposition really becomes they're getting something that is going to work smoothly. They're not necessarily having to pay for that higher subscription rate, ongoing. You built that bridge for them, and now they're not having to pay a toll every time they send data across it. Basically.
Right, correct. So if once we create the API, then they just push the data. Now, in some instances, so for example, Microsoft doesn't charge for that transfer of data if it's within its environment, but other companies that we work for, they do charge a monthly fee. Usually it's very minimal. In one particular case for a healthcare client, the data transfer per month for an entire ophthalmology practice is only $20. So very doable, financially still conscious. So
yeah. What a huge cost savings in just the automation itself, right? And having a
right
person, the lower risk of data entry errors and everything happens every time a human has to touch the keyboard.
Right, and I think regardless of where you are in an organization, the elimination of errors, maybe you can reduce the idea, the ultimate goal is, yes, can you be more efficient, and can that drive to headcount reduction? Headcount reduction, or just reallocating resources,
Yeah.
because it's not only, oh, okay, well, we're losing, like, we no longer need these 5 customer service people, but could they be reallocated to the warehouse? Could they then evolve to the sales team? Can they support, let's say, the finance organization? So it's just, just getting more bandwidth with your current resources.
So you mentioned healthcare. I saw that on your website. Also, what other kind of verticals or target markets are really good fits?
Healthcare is a really positive one, just because there's a lot of data driven by the industry with regards to patient information, addresses, prescriptions, historical information is also. We also have several we do have clients in e-commerce that handle mass data, and even more so now, post COVID, a lot of companies rely on, or a lot of consumers rely on direct shipping. Like, they don't want to go to the store, the brick and mortar is kind of fading away. And a lot of people are just brokering, just companies are drop shipping. So through the use of technology, you can integrate that. There's a company that's my client. Uh, they do coding for shops or garages, so industrial coding.
Okay.
And they do this, so it's a very small team, but they're pretty profitable. But just integrating, leveraging the different their vendors to consolidate, to then be able to provide information for their customers, just adds a lot of value, and just gives them more hands to do more things. So
Can you give me an
e-com.
example of that? Like multiple. So industrial coating is like they're putting the epoxy floors in and
Yes,
those types of things. Okay.
right.
So
Right.
how many different pieces would come together for them to be able to transfer?
Sure. So one thing that they have is that they acquire parts, they acquire product from another vendor, who then buys their coating from another vendor. So a lot of the times, everything is drop shipped, let's say, or split shipped. So for example, half of your order might come from FedEx, and then the other half might come from Full Truck, or half, or a trucking company. So it's not all coming nice and organized in a FedEx manner or with UPS. So the idea is to access the information from their database, extract the information, whether it's trucking company or FedEx or UPS or other major carriers, find the tracking link, estimated delivery dates, pickup location, get that information where it's more digestible and then customer friendly, to then send that automatically to the final customer. So versus the person having to look at this vendor. Oh no, it's drop ship. Now let me go look at the trucking company. Okay, the trucking company airway bill, and then it starts
So
from
they
there.
can kind of coordinate when all the materials and everything are going to be on hand. They can get better, more accurate timelines, do better planning and allocation of the resources and the team that they got there, and ultimately streamline operations, but then also be able to add that value to their end customer and be able to update them and give it, because everybody complains about contractors of any kind, right? And how everything always takes longer than expected. So that has to be a huge value add, and then to be able to just access all that information in one system, and I guess it's kind of calculating or doing those things.
Right, exactly. To
For
be able to
them.
provide, hey, 6 days till delivery for this piece, this pallet, a week lead time, and then this other one. Yeah.
All right. So I'm sure you've got plenty of other great kind of case studies around that. So in terms of growing and where you want to go, like what is the next goal for Garrick? Like how are you looking to expand?
So I think just have a larger presence and just being able to spread across more verticals. I think one good thing is that technology, you can implement it regardless of the industry in its own way. I do feel there's a lot of potential when it comes to AI and large language models. I know it's the buzzword of the world at the moment, But to give you an example, so there's a client that I'm working with in the aviation leasing industry, sorry. So this company leases aircraft to airlines, and what we're looking to do is to consolidate all of this data, historical airplane utilization data, into a large language model, which then users can interact with the model via chatbot. So aviation is a very technically heavy industry, heavy technical, heavily regulated. So it's facilitating the work of these engineers to then be able to come up with a better solution that will save them time. So that's one thing that we're very excited. So I think leveraging that across multiple industries is just something that just that's very exciting, and it's taking companies to the next level. I had a conversation with a CFO for an accounting practice. He has several offices in the United States, and his goal as a CFO is to get the company from over 5 million to over 50 million in the next 3 years. So, these are the tools and the technology that can get that company at that level.
Got it. So when it comes to the sales and marketing, and I think that was kind of the point, or kind of the strategy around there in looking like what are maybe some of the limitations or barriers that are out there, or kind of questions and gaps in what you're trying to go, or kind of that next milestone.
So challenges to evolve to that milestone?
Right, or in just kind of implementing the strategy for going to market, or expanding across these verticals, acquiring more clientele.
Got it. So I think, when it comes to large language models and AI, it still is at a very at a higher price point versus versus more accessible technologies such as automation. So I think that there's a gap there. I think it's too early, and the players that are out there are quite large. And I think also the people that are knowledgeable of the specific subjects are in rarity, and difficult to come across. Data scientists, people familiar with decoding, encoding, warehouse data management. So I think that's a big gap. But I think so. For example, like talking again to healthcare, industries in the healthcare space tend to be more profitable than others. So they might have the funds to leverage to then be able to invest in this technology to then help escalate at a more exponential rate.
So as you're looking to acquire these new customers, like what channels and methodologies are you looking to implement, or are you already implementing?
So how it usually starts out is we have a lot of discovery sessions with our clients. We don't really, or we don't necessarily agree to a specific project, or we promise something. A lot of the times we have a lot of brainstorming sessions where we discuss potential opportunities, with CEOs, COOs. Where do you want the business to be, or a director of sales or VP of sales? What does your labor workforce look like in the next 3 years? Like, what are the roles that they do, and how would you leverage technology to better serve that roles? And then, through brainstorming, then we'll say, okay, well, what's more palpable? What can we attack faster? And then we start going from there. But initially, it's having those conversations where they feel that they have a partner, that we're discussing ideas, versus, hey, here's the solution, sign up, let's get this going. So I think that builds trust to then engage in these larger projects, because they're definitely more medium to long term, right? Versus like an automation might be just a couple of months of development.
Certainly. So how are you getting into those discovery calls initially? How are you getting kind of those prospects to open up and want to hear what you have to say?
So usually it starts out by having webinars, or just communicating through my just history or business network. And then I think it has to go a lot with educating. So creating a lot of content where you're piquing the people's interest as to what can be done, or how can I leverage the gap of, how can I use this technology for me? And so we have a YouTube channel where we bring technology and we talk about different ways or in different industries that it can be used. For example, automation for marketing agencies, they might, they might have to create a lot of folders and subfolders just because of the assets and the production. It's just a very intense documentative process. So, just creating a simple automation can just help a small marketing agency, get more time back to do post-production, to do more editing, to do more interviews, to do more photo corrections. So that's been really helpful, just educating, and that kind of plants the seed to then, take on these larger projects.
So when you do these webinars, are they primarily like live, you're scheduling those, or you're making those kind of on demand, is just living there in YouTube and people are searching and finding?
Initially, more on YouTube to people find them just based on keywords. But also what we're trying to do is also partner with other professions. So for example, we're having a webinar in March where with a business attorney in litigation, where we're going to talk about, yes, the technology, but also like what are the limiting factors? Like what should you be mindful of when dealing with this? So for example, use what type of data are you using to train these models to provide outputs and inputs? So what are the limitations, whether, the healthcare, you're taking HIPAA compliance or FAA with regards to aviation. So what are these, one word that a data scientist that we work with a lot mentions is a guardrail. So it's
Right.
how do you establish guardrails? And then so we'll collaborate with different just different heads or different professions to give us like a more holistic approach than just on the technology side, or maybe human resource professionals, like what can we use and what can't we use, or for example, implications with unions or businesses that have unions, labor workforces, what can be done, what can't be done. So it's a lot of collaboration, which I think is going to add more value and just create more color for these discussions.
Yeah. So from what you're saying and kind of my experience with a lot of these things, it seems like I know the term small business has a very broad definition and can be interpreted in a lot of ways, but it really seems like on the larger scale of that are companies that are going to have a staff or a team that people that are really going to be kind of focused on that technology size. What generally is kind of the range of your ideal client?
I think because right now, the company's still young, we're entertaining all levels, whether it's like a small family-owned business or, multi-million-dollar company. The particular aircraft company that I mentioned, they have over 800 aircraft, so it's a pretty large institution, and there's appetite for both sides. I think as we continue to evolve, and what we would like to do is actually take those, family-owned businesses and grow them into, larger institutions where they can hire more, they can add back more value to the economy, and they can further develop. We do want to encourage owners to be more successful.
So I'm just trying to think in terms of some other metrics, like where's like that breaking point where somebody who's maybe a smaller firm, they're using kind of pre-built tools or things like Zapier, or they're having some manual entry or cross movement of data from one platform to the other. Like where is the point where those things are really going to be insufficient, and it makes much more business sense to hire your company to come in and build something custom for them?
I think like one of the questions that I raise a lot, like to leaders or to clients that we have conversations is, what doesn't let you sleep at night? Like what is that aspect or problem or issue that you're having in your workforce that's just creating friction? And it's not for lower level. Not sorry. Let me correct myself. It's not something that doesn't take up a lot of time, but it's just what's just like the nagging thing that you want to overcome. Like if you could have more time to speak with your customers, to do more business development, to be more on the road, to participate on more conferences and seminars, to better interact with others, then usually like that's the pain point that we'll try to address, because ultimately it's giving back time to people to be more efficient. So I think I wouldn't say it's necessarily a financial implication. It's more of a time, like I frequently use this phrase, you don't make the doctor swipe the floors, right? The doctor needs to be in the surgical room saving lives. So that's kind of how we see it.
Highest and best use of the people that you have, right? Okay. So you got your webinars, you're doing a lot of your networking and kind of connecting with other folks. Like what seems to be maybe the biggest challenge in getting in front of the most ideal customers, generating the leads and prospects to ultimately be able to convert into clients?
I think it depends on the leadership style. I think business owners and business leaders, whether CEO, CEO, or like just in the C-suite, culture is a very important factor of what trickles down in the organization.
Absolutely.
Lower level managers or middle level managers might have the opinion of let's invest, let's change and be creative. But I think a lot of the times, if senior leadership doesn't have a buy-in, then it's just not going to happen. So I think and a lot of the times, in a very broad general sense, these leaders or these business owners have been working in their industry 20, 30 years, very serious, very, very set in their ways. So it's how do you break that? So what we tend to do is look, we're not going to build Rome, right? But like, what can we do to show you what this technology can do, and then kind of take it from there. But it's the initial friction of no, we don't need this. We're profitable, and someone says, someone that I spoke with earlier this week, we're profitable, we're not in trouble. But in the world that we live in, that could change pretty quickly.